London. Only a few months ago, the global economy appeared to be humming, with all major countries growing in unison. Now, the world's fortunes are imperiled by an unfolding trade war. As the Trump administration imposes tariffs on allies and rivals alike, provoking broad retaliation, global commerce is suffering disruption, flashing signs of strains that could hamper economic growth. Latest escalation came Friday, when President Donald Trump announced fresh tariffs on $50 billion in Chinese goods, prompting swift retribution from Beijing. The trade actions between the United States and China could ripple through the global economy, fracturing supply chains and costing jobs. As the conflict broadens, shipments are already slowing at ports and air freight terminals around the world, Rossmann told The New York Times. As the conflict broadens, shipments are slowing at ports and air freight terminals around the world. Prices for crucial raw materials are rising. At factories from Germany to Mexico, orders are being cut and investments delayed. U.S. farmers are losing sales as trading partners hit back with duties of their own. Workers in a Canadian steel mill scrambled to recall rail cars headed to the U.S. border after Trump this month slapped tariffs on imported metals. A Seattle customer soon canceled an order. The impact was felt immediately, said John Hubbs, president of Alte Steel in Edmonton. The penny is really dropping now as to what this means to people's businesses. Article continued below. The Trump administration portrays its confrontational stance as a means of forcing multinational companies to bring factory production back to American shores. Trump has described trade wars as easy to win, while vowing to rebalance the United States' trade deficits with major economies like China and Germany. Read more. Opinion. David Olive. Trump may be a buffoon, but the dangers of his trade war are real. China threatens tariffs on U.S. lobsters as business booms. Trump slaps 25% tariffs on $50 billion U.S. in Chinese imports. Trump's offensive may yet prove to be a negotiating tactic that threatens economic pain to force deals, rather than a move to a full-blown trade war. Americans appear to be better insulated than most from the consequences of trade hostilities. As a large economy in relatively strong shape, the United States can find domestic buyers for its goods and services when export opportunities shrink. Even so, history has proved that trade wars are costly while escalating risks of broader hostilities. Fears are deepening that the current outbreak of antagonism could drag down the rest of the world. Article continued below. Before most trade measures fully take effect, businesses are grappling with the consequences, threats to their supplies, and uncertainty over the terms of trade. Just talking about protectionism is causing trouble, said Marie Owens Thompson, global chief economist at Indosuez Wealth Management in Geneva. It's an existential risk to the world economy. Let us not understate the macroeconomic impact, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, warned this past week about trade conflicts. It would be serious, not only if the United States took action, but especially if other countries were to retaliate, notably those who would be most affected, such as Canada, Europe and Germany. For companies that make steel and aluminum, the U.S. tariffs have presented a direct and menacing challenge to their businesses. At Alta, the steel mill in Edmonton, the metals tariffs delivered an immediate crisis. Roughly one-fifth of the company's business involves shipping steel to U.S. customers. Suddenly, the border separating Canada from the United States was effectively enshrouded in fog. The company redirected rail cars destined for customers in the United States, incurring extra freight charges reaching $100,000 Canadian. Lawyers for some of Alta's customers have suggested that certain products might be classified to avoid tripping the U.S. tariffs, which applied only to specific types of steel. Yet for now, the company is waiting for rulings from overwhelmed U.S. customs officials. We do not know when we will get an answer out of the U.S. government, Hobbs said. Nobody, including the U.S. Border Protection Agency, knows what to do. Across Europe, steelmakers fret about an indirect consequence of Trump's tariffs. Cheap Chinese steel previously destined for the United States, now redirected to their continent. We have seen increases, said Matthias Ternell, International Affairs Director at Jernkontoret, a Swedish steel industry association in Stockholm. This is what Swedish companies and European companies worry about the most. Trump portrays trade hostilities as a necessary corrective to U.S. trade deficits with other nations. But economists and business leaders note that many imports are components that are used to manufacture goods at U.S. factories. Electrolux, the Swedish manufacturer of household appliances, recently postponed plans to upgrade a stove factory in Tennessee, citing uncertainties created by the tariffs. In the suburbs of Austin, Texas, Matt Bush, vice president of a small company that makes structures used in office buildings and retail spaces, said steel tariffs would force his company to pay as much as $50,000 a month extra for metal. You have to imagine all the people who are purchasing raw steel and aluminum for input into their business are in the same predicament, he said. And it's probably staggering how far that reaches. In the Spanish city of Toledo, Exdol, a company that makes parts for the automobile and railroad industries, has recently seen customers demand supply contracts lasting no more than 3 months, rather than the usual one-year duration. With the price of aluminum rising, buyers are reluctant to commit, said the company's chief executive, Fernando Busto. We are watching events with enormous worry, Busto said. The political decisions of Donald Trump are resulting in turbulence and volatility.